Thanks for joining. For those folks who are still starting to join, just type in the chat, hello, where you're tuning in from. We'd love to see where you're listening in. So I'm just really excited to be here today to help moderate for Lily Wu, the incredible Lily. I'll just kind of introduce me really quickly, and then we'll go ahead and jump right into Lily's AMA. So my name's Angelina Hong. I'm a part of the AHN team. I'm a moderator, and I help out with a few other things as well. I'm a lifestyle and branding photographer based out of San Francisco. So I personally love to help passionate women entrepreneurs create authentic and compelling visual content for social media and the web. So with that, I'm actually super excited to be moderating today for Lily. So we can welcome Lily today. Hello, Lily.
Hi. Really great to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yay. I'll give a quick and brief intro, and then Lily, you can go ahead and then just like jump right in. So Lily Wu today, so she's here. She's the head of programs of NewCampus and co-founder of Austern International. Lily is originally from Sydney, but currently lives in Singapore. She's the head of programs at a lifelong learning school called NewCampus, and NewCampus acts as a gym, as like a gym membership for the mind. So Lily also previously founded 2 7-figure businesses, which we will talk about, which is super cool. Both of them started as side hustles and before making them full-time. So she's a constant traveler. She's traveled to 17 countries, and you'll get to see some pictures of those just in the past year alone. So 2019, right, Lily? Yes. That's incredible. Good timing too, right? So aside from work, she has many interests and hobbies, including drawing, dancing, learning languages, and being an avid reader. Once upon a time, she was also published 2 children's books with Scholastic and was on the Australian national team for Japanese martial arts called Taido. So Lily, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Angelina, for the lovely introduction. I'm just going to share screen now. So today I'm going to be talking mostly about my entrepreneurship journey as a lifelong learner. And so hopefully I'll be able to piece together not just the entrepreneurial journey, but also all the other things that I love doing as well, and share some of those insights that I've gained over the years. So Angelina already did a really great introduction, but what I'd like to add is that whilst those were kind of like my achievements, it's kind of like the highlights, but this is kind of what I follow in my life. And it's these 5 main values. I follow my curiosity around whether that is learning new things or interests. I follow adventure. I love having fun, and I love traveling, as you can see. I love the sense of freedom. Also, the things that I work towards is not to make a huge amount of money, but to actually be able to give me time and freedom to be able to nurture the relationships that I really admire and really adhere to. And then also I love to exercise my creativity across a lot of different kinds of domains and piece them together. So hopefully through my story today, you'll be able to see how my experiences relate to each of those values as well. So today, the topic that we've picked is applying lifelong learning to entrepreneurial success. So the first thing I would like to, it's going to be sectioned into 3 parts and 3 learnings that I've gotten, and how each of those interests and curiosities that I have intersected with my entrepreneurial journey. So the first one is, how did art actually help me discover entrepreneurship? So actually, I was born in a very artistic family. My parents are both artists. They're not your typical Asian parents. My dad did abstract art. My mom did oil painting. And when I was growing up, they allowed me to just do a lot of types of freestyle. I did a lot of doodling and journals when I was traveling. And so these are a lot of my kind of drawings when I was traveling last year as well. And I love using fine liner pen. I don't use pencil or eraser. I just draw straight on, whatever goes. So but the thing with born into an artistic family is that a lot of the times the income is not very secure. So when I was 16, my parents were going through some financial struggles. because the money wasn't coming in consistently. And so in 2010, when I was about 15 or 16 years old, my parents went back to China for 3 months. And at the time, they left me with $100. And honestly, I had never seen so much money at once. So I was like, hell yeah, I'm balling in cash. And so then 2 weeks later, they were gone for 3 months. They probably assumed that I would ask for more money after, the $100 ran out and not give me like a huge lump sum in the beginning. But I legitimately thought that that $100 was it. Like, it was supposed to last me for 3 months. I had like no concept of money at all. And so I was like, shit, it's running out already. Like 2 weeks in, they're gonna kill me if they find out that, I've spent this money already after 2 weeks. So I did what every other 15, 16-year-old in Sydney would do, which was to try to apply for part-time jobs. Right. So I applied for everything. I applied for McDonald's, KFC, like, all these retail stores, you name it. But for some reason, I just couldn't get a single job. And I was like, why don't they want to hire underpaid, underage worker, But, at the same time, I was really, really, at the time, it was like the start of K-pop, and I was super into these types of shoes. I don't know if you can see the profile picture, but it's basically the Adidas Jeremy Scott wing shoes. I was super into them. Everyone was like into it at the time. And I thought it looked really cool. And they retail for $300 in Australia. And there was only 1 or 2 styles that were available. So Australia always gets the end of the stick where everything is expensive and we don't get many choices. So I had just come back from a few years ago, this ballet competition in Italy, and I met these Americans, and one of them owned an Adidas outlet. And, whenever I go to the States, you see these Calvin Kleins, they're like, 3 for $6. And I'm like, what the hell? In Australia, they're all $60 a pair. So I asked her, how much. It was just after the global financial crisis, or the housing market crisis, as you would call it. So, everyone was trying to get rid of their stock. So I was like, how much do these wholesale for? Like, how much can you sell it to me for? And so she was like, oh, it's $50, like US, to wholesale for you. But if you want to ship it to Australia, it's another $50. Right. And $50 US at that time was only 40 Australian dollars, which is amazing, because the Australian dollar was super high. And so I was like, I'm not paying this much shipping to just buy one pair of shoes. It's like the same amount as the shoes itself. So my friend said, oh, but if you bulk buy 20, at least 20, then that shipping is basically a flat fee, and you can, ship it 20, like the shipping would be free. So I was like, great, I'm going to ask my friends to ship these, to like buy these shoes with me, because they really wanted it. And I just went and was like, hey, you guys, you want to buy these shoes at $40? Like, we could buy it all together and get shipping for free. And so my friend's immediate response was, there's no freaking way that it could be $40. And I was like, okay, that's really interesting that, it's just after the financial crisis, everything, also Australia is always a season behind. So by the time that, it's out of fashion in the States, that's when it becomes fashionable in Australia, because your winter is our summer and vice versa. And the currency was super good at the time, just after the financial crash. And so they were still like, oh, I don't know, it seems like a really big gap. So I went to another group of friends and I was like, hey, I'm buying these shoes for $80, and to me, it was just in case that we weren't gonna get an order of 20 anyway. It was gonna cover the shipping costs. I was like, we're getting these shoes for $80. Do you want to get them with me? And it was really interesting because everyone who responded went to all boys private schools, like different private schools. And one of them said to me, actually, you know what? If I can get you an order of 20, then what do I get out of it? Because I have friends who want to get this. And so I was like, you know what? That's really interesting that you say that. So I said to him, if you can get me an order of 20 by the end of next week, so in 2 weeks' time, then you can charge whatever you want. If you want to charge 200 or 250, you can take a cut as long as it's more than $80. So you can basically take like $170 cut if you want to, as long as it's more than $80. I'll take a $40 cut. And it seems really dumb, right? But then I went to 10 other friends or 9 other friends, and I basically said the same thing. They all went to different types of all boys private schools. I like found this market because boys are super shameless, especially at that age. And to them, they treated it, I went to all girls school. So they were like, why would you charge more for someone? Whilst their mentality was, it's a win-win situation because, you know, I get to make money, but it's also cheaper than retail and there's more styles. So I went to 9 other friends and I said the same thing. You know, if you can give me an order of 20 by the end of next week, then you can charge whatever you want. And I take all the risk as well, right? So this was basically my MVP. My first ever public page was called Crystal Digitally. I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, but it was basically Google translated from my name, my 2 best friends' name at the time. It was Joy and Crystal, and I just like smashed them together and then put it into Google Translate and turned it French because it sounded fancy. So that was my first business name. But eventually I didn't even use that because all I had was, I had this Word doc with all the different types of shoes, styles. And then I also had this Excel spreadsheet, which was like name, address, size, you know, amount. And so I would give them to the 10 boys who would sell it to their friends. And so at the end of 2 weeks, they came back to me with the shoes and I asked them for a $40 bond per pair of orders because I said to them, you know, what happens if like I order these shoes and you cancel on me and I'm stuck with this size 43 silver pair of wing shoes that no one else is going to buy. So, you know, it was all done through cash. But the business model was super easy. They basically came back to me, 10 kids, I had 20 orders each. So that was 200 orders. And each pair of shoes, I made a $40 profit. So at the end of the 2 weeks, I made $8,000 profit. And then, so what was really interesting was that at least 5 people from the 20 who had bought the shoes would then come to me and say, hey, you know what, like, oh my gosh, like I have other friends who want to get this. How can I join? How can I like, you know, also like make this money and help sell these shoes? So it was fully like a word of mouth kind of thing. And then eventually, you know, over a year or so, I was still studying for exams and everything, but we built out some processes and stuff like that. So at the end of 2 years, we weren't just selling Adidas, Jeremy Scott's, but other types of shoes as well. But in the 2 years that I was doing this, I'd made about 500,000 profit. And, you know, it was really interesting because I only started this because I wanted to buy 1 pair of shoes. And before this, I had no idea what the concept of entrepreneurship was. I never even heard that word. And a lot of my friends who were selling those shoes with me made so much more money than me. And we ended up being able to pay off our like university fees and like, and putting in down payments for property. And also I paid a lot of tax. But how did art actually relate to entrepreneurship? I really believe that, you know, from my doing art from a very, very young age, one of the main factors is that you really need to have an image in your head and be able to translate that onto paper. And so it's really daunting when you're looking at, say, a blank piece of paper or blank canvas and being able to take that first step. And to me, that taking that first step in just starting something was very natural for me, but may not be for other people if they think too much, right? And that's the thing with art, I just can't think too much. I just start drawing, otherwise it will never happen. It will still remain a blank piece of paper. And so to me, done is definitely better than perfect, and you learn on the way and you can't iterate. But entrepreneurial thinking is a lot about problem solving as well. And with art, you always make mistakes. There are so many times, literally every single art piece that I make, halfway through, I feel like ripping it out because I made some mistake and it looks really crappy on paper. But part of the challenge is how do you actually make that mistake into something beautiful, and embrace those mistakes and work around it. If you paint something, you know, on a piece of canvas and you've already spent 3 hours on it and you made a mistake, are you going to really throw away that canvas that you bought? No, you just fix it somehow, and paint over it or something. So I really think that kind of mindset and mentality was stemmed through art from a very young age. And it's a shame that, you know, the education system now doesn't value that kind of problem solving or failure or being able to be rewarded by just like starting something, rather than, you know, being too scared to fail, feeling like you have to be perfect, have really, really good marks, or get the maximum, you know, get the maximum exam. Otherwise, you're going to be punished by your parents. So yeah, that ends up stemming a mentality that you can't start because you're too scared to fail. So that was my first business. After I finished high school, I went into university and I started my second business and started martial arts at the same time. So this is really about how did martial arts help me with my second business. So a bit about my martial arts was that I was on open day, you know, just strolling along, and I saw one of my friends do a backflip, and I was like, that's cool, and I want to join this. And I thought it looked a lot like dance, which I really like. So I decided to join it. That was purely the reason. I'd never heard of this martial arts before. It kind of looks like a mix of capoeira and Wing Chun together. I don't know, you can maybe YouTube it, but it's, you know, I joined in 2013 in my first year of university. And then my goal from the beginning was, you know, what would be cool is if in 2017, 4 years later, I could join, I could get into the Australian team and compete in the World Championships. So that was kind of my goal from the beginning, not to actually win anything, but just to like attend and compete. So this is, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but I'm the one in the back left. And then here I'm the one in the middle somewhere with the green shirts. Yes, but you know, during that time when I was doing martial arts, it was actually a lot of training, much more than I thought it was going to be. It was 3 times a week and I did 3 hours each session. So it was 9 hours of training every single week for 4 years, 5 years. So I started my second business around the same time. In my first year of uni, I was hired by a global accounting firm to be an accountant. I applied during high school and I was accepted as what they call a cadet. They give you a salary and then you do like full-time work, part-time study, you do a rotation over 4 years of university. And I just thought it would be cool to experience what it was like to work in corporate. And after my first year, I quit. I just had this existential crisis because I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I'm gonna die doing this. You know, accounting isn't the most, let's just say accounting isn't my forte. And I just felt so restricted, so micromanaged. It was just the opposite of like what I wanted to do. And so when I quit, I had 3 problems I was facing. The first one was that I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was majoring in accounting and now I just quit this accounting job and I never want to touch accounting again. And I knew a lot of friends around me were like, I have no idea why I picked my course, because, you know, you don't know what you want when you're in high school and you're supposed to make all these choices by the time you're in university. So a lot of the friends either, you know, studied the typical medicine or law. If they didn't know what they wanted, they studied commerce. And so a lot of people were just like really lost. The second thing was that, you know, so many of my friends were like to me, how do I even get experience without experience in the first place? You know, you're so lucky, you just got this job out of high school, but, you know, it's so competitive in my penultimate or final year to even get into one of these big 4 accounting firms and whatever. And I was like, you know what, I'm really glad I had this experience because, you know, I would have imagine if I'd gone through my entire university degree thinking that my trajectory was to get into an accounting firm, and then I just wasted all this time. So I'm lucky what I never want to do again, to know what I don't want to do ever again. And then the third thing was that, you know, I felt like my work was very, very repetitive. And it's one of those things where, for sure, technology will replace. And I just watched this, saw this article where JP Morgan designs this software that replaces 360,000 hours of what lawyers do in seconds. And so I was like, well, that's great. My other major is commercial law. So, you know, accounting and law, both these things are easily automated. So that's great. So I wanted to know how I could build my transferable skills so that no matter which industry I end up in or exploring, I can, you know, translate those skills into different domains. And so I started Austern International, and we basically ran 3-week career boot camps across all these different cities and countries so that people could explore, you know, and open up their global mindset. So it was in Sydney, Melbourne, Singapore, Hong Kong, Shanghai, New York, and San Francisco. And so during those 3 weeks, we would partner with 2 different companies. You know, one would be either a corporate and one would be a startup, so that they could experience 2 different types of environments. And then within the 1 week, they would do some sort of sprint. The company would give a problem that they're facing, and then they would have to actually implement a solution and test it in a very basic level. And at the end of the week, if the winning team would actually have their project rolled out. And often the companies would just hire that team to help roll out the project. So that happened with Uber, with Carousel, and a few other companies. So this photo here was at Dropbox in the Sydney office. I don't know if Serena is here on this call today, but she's very active on AHN, and this is her in the middle somewhere, on the left middle. Serena, hello. So by the end of the 4 or 5 years that I was running Austern, we were course accredited by 6 universities. That included UC Riverside for your Americans, as well as Nottingham Uni and 4 other universities, Monash, RMIT, UTS in Sydney and in Melbourne. So each of these programs cost $300. Most of them could be also subsidized by the university because if it's course accredited, we ran 12 programs a year, mostly concentrated in different locations all at the same time during the summer and winter holidays, and each program had 30 to 40 students. So that was well over $1 million in revenue. We partnered with 50 different types of global companies, startups, and corporates as well, and we had over 1,000 students who participated in those 5 years. So our team was very, very small. It was just me and my co-founder, Jamie, and 2 other part-time employees. But we had a group of ambassadors who were alumni from the programs who would then also drive some of the initiatives as well. So how did martial arts actually help me during my second business? And I think I drew a lot of relationship and correlation between these 2 as I was doing those 2 things at the same time. So the first thing is that martial arts really taught me tenacity and hard work, because honestly, for a hobby, 9 hours, like dedicating 3 nights a week, 3 hours each time was a lot. But I did that consistently over the few years that I was doing it. And, you know, there are a lot of injuries along the way, you know, getting kicked in the head, you know, accidentally, like, you know, spraining something. And there's also a lot of metaphorical injuries in my business as well. A lot of like shitty stuff happened. And so at that point, do you just quit? Right. And you have to just work through those things and work through those setbacks. The second most important thing that I learned was the combination of strategy, tactic, and gut feeling. The thing was that, you know, when I just first started martial arts, I would learn 1 or 2 moves. And when I would spar with, like, I was like a white belt, right? Sparring with a black belt, and I would hit a move and I would win a point. And I felt like the absolute shit. Like I thought I was so good, you know, I was like beating a black belt, right? So the problem was that it was this just one technique, just once. And so I would use that tactic over and over again. But obviously the next times they've known how you move very, very quickly. They've learned how you move. And so they just beat you up. So you have to kind of like go through those learning hurdles as well. And same with Austern, I used a lot of tactics in the beginning. There was no strategy involved. I used a lot of hacks, which was basically joining a lot of Facebook groups. Some of you still might remember if I've like joined your university group. I joined like all the Canadian university groups, all the US UC schools. And I would just ask someone who had the university email to give me their code so I could join their university group and pretend I was a student there. And I don't know if that's legal. But anyway, I posted stuff about Austern and in their jobs and internship pages, and I would just like spam it. And so that actually got a lot of initial traction. I got a lot of initial students who first saw it through those jobs and internship pages. But obviously over time, this is a tactic and not a strategy, because they will start getting sick of looking at your posts that you post every time. And so whilst you are doing those short-term gains, you also have to look at the broader strategy on how you are going to be sustainable in attracting students or inbound students or building a brand. And with that, you know, I think martial arts really taught me that like beginner's mentality, because when you're first starting out, even if you're initially like talented at something, you will always reach a plateau and you always have to push through that plateau to improve. And with Austern, the program that we had at the end was nothing like the program that we had in the beginning. It was like completely different. But each time it didn't matter. It was like we would just iterate and improve on the programs until it got to the place where we imagined it to be. So the third thing is how, after Austern, you know, how did traveling and language learning really help with my own career? So after I graduated, what I really wanted to do was to travel, but not just travel, but actually learn languages. And my goal for 2019 was to go to 4 different countries and learn 4 different languages and immerse myself 3 months each. I don't know if any of you have ever seen Scott Young's language learning, where he learned 4 different languages. That's where I was inspired from. And I love his kind of like learning how to learn stuff. But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to learn Spanish, French, because they were both closest to English languages, and then Korean and Japanese because they were closest to Chinese, because I speak both Mandarin and Cantonese fluently. So those were the languages that I wanted to learn. But then in my first month, I was in Korea, and I had just joined NewCampus, and my boss, Will and Faye, shout out if you're here, but asked me to, we just rebranded to NewCampus. It was a completely different business, completely different name before. So we were going to launch a completely new business in Singapore. So they asked me to be the Singapore country manager and roll out NewCampus in Singapore and operationalize it. So I ended up only doing 1 month in Korea before I went to Singapore for 6 months. So actually I didn't fully do the 4 languages and 4 countries, but I spent 6 months in Singapore rolling out NewCampus. And then my bosses are super awesome. You know, we were a remote company from the beginning, so they actually let me continue traveling. So I ended up doing the rest of 2019, 3 months in Europe, and then 3 months in South America. And when I was in South America, I did intensive Spanish studying. So these photos were like a combination of Korea. I was in Mexico, met some local friends and celebrated Day of the Dead, which is awesome. And also the one with the spear, I was in the Amazon forest in Ecuador, repping NewCampus in the forest, you know. Yeah. So my job at NewCampus, like what is NewCampus? We are a membership-based company, but a lifelong learning and leadership company that is aimed to equip learners to navigate the changing social, environmental, technological changes in the world today by, you know, really honing in the type of skills that we need, the type of relationships that we need, and the type of insights. So this includes, you know, either skill-based kind of workshops, whether that is, we have a lot of like breakfasts and lunches. So an example is an upcoming one is we invited the chief of staff at Microsoft, and we run a lot of these things where they can share their insights and their thought leadership as well. And then we run a lot of different conferences according to global issues and trends that are happening. So not just related to work stuff, but also what is actually broadening your mindset and what is happening in the world today. So the last one that we ran was around design ethics of technology. So we invited Erica Chong, who was the whistleblower for Theranos. We invited people like directors from IDEO, IKEA, Airbnb, etc., Microsoft, to share their insights around, you know, what is, you know, how is AI discriminating people of color, or like, you know, those kind of issues as well. So I built out all the curriculum. I source speakers and also any other projects that require program building as well. So what has NewCampus done in the last year and a half that we've been in existence? We work with different corporates as well to build out, you know, digital transformation leadership curriculums. And I've had to do a lot of, you know, my own research and interviewing because I didn't have any experience in those areas before. We run monthly conferences around different topics, but also when I joined, we launched the brand from nothing. So this was our first ever event that was given a 3-week timeline from the moment I landed in Singapore to launching the brand. So we ended up partnering with WeWork, and that was like a one-man project manager show. So sourcing all the speakers, doing the marketing, finding the people, getting everyone to come, doing logistics. But luckily, our team helps me with that, with all the events now. And now we're working on a government project around creating a growth mindset index. So if any of you are interested in growth mindset stuff, like please hit me up and let me know. Would love to have you involved as well. So how does traveling and language learning actually help with my career? I think the biggest one, you know, aside from learning about people's culture, etc., it teaches me a different way of thinking and to question my assumption. And what do I mean by that? Is that whenever you start learning a new language, you know, the first thing that you notice is that the language is structured in very different ways, and that affects the way that you think. So an example is when I was learning Japanese and Korean, you'll notice that all the verbs and adjectives are at the end of the sentence. So you literally have to listen carefully the whole sentence until the end to actually understand what the context is and what the situation is even about. Whilst in English, we use very active syntax. So it's like, I ran somewhere, like you are doing something. And so how does that actually affect the way that people process information and look at the world in that way? When I was studying Spanish or French, the thing that you notice is that everything is gendered. So you have gendered pronouns and you also have gendered conjugations for verbs. And you know, the thing that I was wondering was like, what happens if you happen to be a non-binary or a queer person, or, you know, you don't identify with any of these gendered pronouns or gendered conjugations? Like, how do people identify you? And these are just things I never even thought about until I learned those languages, because you just don't question your assumptions when you only speak that one language. And so, you know, if someone is a French speaker and every single noun has a gender, how do they actually look at the world? And how does that reflect reality to them? So language learning really taught me, you know, just the way that sentences are structured and the way that the language has been built grammatically, it can really affect the way that you process information and the way that you view the world. You know, language learning and traveling has really allowed me to get out of my comfort zone, because when you're traveling and you're trying to learn a language, and I'm like with my partner speaking English, it's really hard to then practice your language learning unless you're very intentional about it. So you just have to practice with, your taxi driver, people on the street, just hit up conversations. And so with that, it teaches you to be way more resourceful on how you get those opportunities. And at the same time, I apply those things every day with NewCampus when I have to hit up, speakers who I thought I would never be able to get. And the organizers at AHN have done that super, super well. I think that's a common trait, being resourceful, right? If you're an entrepreneur. The third thing is, how do you connect with others based on your similarities and be able to empathize with others, even if they're really, really different. If I can connect with this, when we were in the Galapagos Islands, connect with a taxi driver who doesn't speak English and only Spanish, and we can still have a decent conversation, then, I can translate those mentalities to people that I meet whenever I'm in a new country, or even within the country that you're living in as well. So to wrap up this presentation, these are kind of the main 4 key learnings on applying lifelong learning within entrepreneurship itself. And the first one is that learning is a lifelong journey. It doesn't end when you finish university. I know that a lot of people in this group obviously are very much lifelong learners and always learning, whether that is academically or not, it doesn't matter. The second is that you need to try new things and to be curious. Like, people always say, I don't know what my passion is, I don't know what I want to do. But how do you actually even know that if you don't try new things and you don't experiment? And it's okay if you don't know what your passion is. I think more importantly, it's great to be curious and good to be, just want to see how the world works and want to be curious and learn new things. And this leads on to my third moment, which is the third point, which is when you are learning new things, you are always put in that beginner's mindset. And when you are put in that beginner's mindset, it challenges the way that you thought you were always, things that you always thought you were good at. And growth mindset is really about, even if you're not good at it in the beginning, which no one is, that's why you're a beginner. But you have to work through those challenges and roadblocks along the way in order to be good at something. And having that attitude and not giving up when you feel like, oh, I'm just not good at that, is what will get you really far in life. Finally, something that I absolutely believe in is really the intersection of your knowledge, your interests, and your experiences is what makes you the most valuable and the most creative and the most advantageous. It allows you to translate a lot of concepts from broad, experiences and translate them into different domains and different areas. And that is really, really important, especially since we live in such a complex world today. It's not, people who just only specialize in one thing is great, but it's really easily automated. And so technology can really easily, replace that. But if you have experiences and you can draw a lot of insights from seemingly unrelated fields, then you're going to have a much more powerful ability when it comes to generating something unique and providing value. So yes, that is all I wanted to present on today. I hope how you can see that I have used these values in my experiences. I'm not my experiences, but every day I'm picking the decisions and the path that I want to go down according to these values, whether that is curiosity, adventure, freedom, relationships, or creativity. So thank you, everyone. I hope you can connect with me on, you can connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn or Instagram. I also have some art accounts if you want to follow that. Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lily. That was a really great presentation. I feel like you did a really good job at connecting all the dots in your life and how that led to you being an entrepreneur. And I feel like, a lot of people can relate to that. So I'll go ahead and jump into some of the questions that we have in the Q&A box here in Zoom. The first one is from Calvin. What was it like being an entrepreneur at such a young age?
I feel like, because I think it was a very formative experience, obviously at a very young age. I didn't view myself as an entrepreneur until later. All I wanted was a pair of shoes and how to get that. And things just kind of like, I just started with doing something, and, you know, it kind of progressed like that. So it always started as a side hobby. It never started off as I want to be an entrepreneur. And you know, until I actually find something that I really want to pursue and make it into a business, then I will just keep doing that as kind of like side interest until it becomes some sort of business, if it does at all. And I'm not stressed about that. But it really taught me like problem solving and viewing things in a more logical way, using first principles, like understanding these are just the things that how do things actually work, and what kind of steps can I take to get there, instead of like, how is everyone else doing it? Oh, they're raising money. Oh, they're doing this. Oh, it's like, you know, I don't like to subscribe to just because someone else has succeeded in a certain way, you can do things your own way as well.
Awesome. Let's actually touch a little bit more on that. So Estella asks if you could share more about your experience, you know, being an entrepreneur, starting your own businesses, especially when you didn't have all the foundational knowledge to build that business. So, you know, touching on your growth mindset and just touching on how you know, built your businesses through maybe like minimal knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely had no knowledge at all. I just knew that I needed to cover my costs, because literally when you have limitations, you will be creative on how you do things. Because I had no money, how am I going to pay for things? Like, there's no way I'm going to pay for 200 pairs of shoes out of my pocket. Like, I just don't have the money to do that. So then I was like, okay, they better pay me first, and then I will use that money and pay for the shoes, and then I'll get the rest of the money. At least I cover my risk, right? Because I ain't got any money to do that. So I'll kind of share my experience of starting Austern as well. I know I just shared like what it looked like at the end, and it can kind of seem like such a big jump from, you know, you're a 19-year-old and you have these companies on board, right? So actually when I first started Austern, I had quit my job, and at the time I was like, crap, I need to find something to do before my parents were also overseas at the time. Things always seem to happen when my parents are overseas. So my parents are overseas, and I was like, okay, I gotta figure out what I'm gonna say to them when I tell them that I quit after 1 year instead of, you know, following through 4 years. I don't even think they even cared. I just projected that, I feel like, now that I look back. But I was like, okay, I want experience in Asia, because, you know, our prime minister at the time, Julia Gillard, just wrote this white paper that was Australia in the Asian century. So I was like, well, I'm Chinese, I speak Mandarin or Cantonese, like I can go to China and do some sort of work internship or something. And, you know, I look at my parents, I was like, gonna ask them if they knew anyone. Then I was like, oh wait, they're artists, they don't know anyone. So then I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure it out. And then I was like, I don't really want to go to China by myself. And so I was like, you know what, I'm going to ask all my friends to see if they want to come to China with me. So I literally asked my primary school friends, my high school friends, my uni friends, and some of them are my best friends today. And they actually helped me initially start what was Austern. But I asked them, hey, you guys want to come to China with me? I'm planning to do this internship experience. It's going to be a month. We're going to go to, like, I'll organize it for you, right? Like, you pay me $2,000. I'm estimating that amount. I'll organize all our accommodation, food, whatever, Chinese language learning if you want to learn Chinese, and also an internship for you. I really did think that through. And I was like, whatever is remaining, I'll give it back to you if, like, I don't end up using the $2,000. And they're like, cool, yeah, let's do that. And then I realized that everyone studied different things. Like, someone was studying aeronautics engineering, someone was studying law, I was like, oh crap, like there's no way that I can even find these. Where do I even start? What city do I even go to? So I thought, you know, what is something that is publicly available? Whilst company emails were really hard to get, what's something that is actually publicly available? And so I actually scraped, instead of trying to find like companies in a city, all I did was I scraped university emails, and I looked specifically for the Dean of International Education because their KPI was to get more international students to come into their university. So I would specifically look for that title in each of the university stuff. So I scraped that, probably emailed like 400 different universities around China, and anyone with the English speaking department. And I wrote in my shitty Chinese, you know, kind of like, hey, we're a group of 20 Australian students. We love to go to your university. Can we pay you a lump sum and you organize like internship experiences for us? Because I knew that universities have good relationships with companies around the city, right? So then I don't have to do it. They can do it. And so I got so many rejections. I think only 4 people replied to me. Probably was so appalled by my written language. But one of the universities that we ended up going to was called Liaoning Daxue, which is in a city called Shenyang. And, you know, I was like, what? Where is that? And I literally Wikipedia, I Googled it, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's like the border of North Korea. And then I looked up the city, and I was like, oh, Shenyang, you know, and I told my friends, hey, you guys want to go to Shenyang? You know, it's the capital of Northeast China. It used to be the capital city, apparently, before Beijing. You know, they have the imperial palaces there, and Liaoning Daxue is like, has one of the top 10 business schools. Never mind that half of them didn't study business, but, you know, it's representative of a good school, hopefully. But it was actually like a 2nd or 3rd tier uni. But they were all just like, yeah, let's do it. I think they just wanted to have fun. So then we went to Shenyang. We ended up doing language learning. They organized some internships for us. And then they basically were like, hey, we want to continue partnering with you. We want more Australian students to come to Liaoning University. So she was like, what's your business name? And I was like, business name. And so me and my friends sat in a cafe and we were like, what should we call this? And I was like, oh, in 3 seconds, literally 3 seconds, I was like, Australian interns squashed together, Austern. And my friend was like, do you want to think about this a bit more? And I was like, nah, who cares? It's just a name. I think I have a tendency of squashing names together. But yeah, that's what happened. And it was called Austern and just stuck. And a few years later, it was really funny. I was searching on Google Trends, like Austern. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like, there's a spike in Germany. You know, we have so many German students who are looking up Austern International. And then I look on Google Images and it actually is the German word for oyster. So then whenever anyone asked me what Austern meant, I was like, it's German for oyster. So, you know, the world is your oyster, because the more like oysters that you open, the more opportunities that you take, the more likely you'll be able to find your pearl. So yeah, that was all bullshit, but you know, it worked. That's how it started.
That's really funny. I feel like that's part of being an entrepreneur, is just like being very savvy and like on your toes. So that's great. So I'll just ask one last question and then we'll go ahead and start wrapping it up, because I know there is a giveaway. So from Paulina, was it difficult to get people to listen to you or to take you seriously because of your age?
Yeah, I think what I really took advantage in the beginning was that, I mean, in high school, it didn't matter because everyone was a high school student. It was the fact that everyone knew each other from high school. So it was like, oh, you know, you got a really good deal. Like, you know, it didn't matter what your age was. For Austern, definitely. And I looked at it in different ways. So when I was 18 and just starting, and 19, I didn't say that I was the founder, because that was just not credible, and people aren't going to pay $3,000 to an 18-year-old to run programs overseas. So what I really utilized was, I said I partnered with Liaoning University and I was bringing their program to Australia, and that's what I capitalized on. And I really sold the kind of China story, because that's the only resource I had. And I was like, you know, China's going to be really important in the next coming age. Like the business age is really important for people to learn Chinese, but also know how to do business in China, especially because we're Australians and we have such close proximity to Asia. And a lot of businesses actually do value experience if you are able to deal with Chinese clients, right? That's just the reality. So I utilized that. And I just say that we were the ambassadors to bring those programs to them. And that's what I sold. Like, I didn't say that I founded this company or this program because I just didn't believe that it was very credible until we had more traction and we ran a few more programs. Then we ended up, I got my co-founder who was really awesome. She's like 6 years older than me, Jamie. And she was able, we ended up just like, you know, leapfrogging from, you know, companies, you know, basic companies that we worked with in China to kind of just work to get better and better companies. And that way you leapfrog to like, you know, global companies. You don't just start there from the very beginning. Then once you can get those companies and it's been running a couple like years, like 1 or 2 years, then you can kind of change the angle to being like, you know, this program was millennial, designed by a millennial for millennials, for example, and it's not just designed by, you know, the university or someone who doesn't understand the struggles that millennials have to go through. So that's kind of like the angle change that I had to make to like to compensate for my lack of experience and my age.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I feel like I learned a lot, and I hope everyone else did too. I think the naming of the Austern was the funniest thing to me. So thank you so much, Lily. Do you want to start talking about your giveaway?
Yep, so we have a 1 month giveaway, free giveaway for NewCampus membership. This is where you can get access to all of our classes, our breakfast with executives, company executives, as well as any of our conferences that we are running, and to like just check out what kind of different things that you can be a part of as well. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go ahead and choose the winner.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for explaining that, Lily. So how we're going to do this, we're going to do a random generator. So if you registered for the event on the Zoom registration page, you are eligible to win the 1 month free subscription to NewCampus. So I will start off with the first name, and if you hear your name and are in this Zoom webinar, then type into the chat that you're here. So if you guys are streaming in through Facebook Live and you registered via Zoom, please make sure that you are joining the Zoom webinar. Otherwise, I won't be able to know that you're here. Okay, so the first name is Simon Chan. So if Simon's here, you can type into the chat that you're here. Otherwise, I'm just gonna go to the next name. I'm gonna give it like, what do you guys think? Should I give it like 10 seconds?
Move on.
Move on? Okay, all right. Sorry, Simon. All right, okay, the next name is Erica Lee. Is Erica Lee in the Zoom? Yeah, so I'm checking the attendee list right now, so just want to make sure. Erica, are you here? No, I don't see an Erica. No, all right, next. All right, the next name is Lauren Hazen. Is Lauren Hazen here? No, I don't see a Lauren. Okay, next. All right, next name is Amy Xie. Is Amy here? If you're here, go ahead and say here in the chat. No, Amy? Nope, nope. Okay, all right. This is totally random generator, so I'm not like selecting any names myself, so. All right, okay, next name is Quinn Nguyen. Is Quinn here? No Quinn? All right, okay. Next name is Paulina. Paulina. Is Paulina here? Paulina Tai. Here, okay, Paulina. Awesome. Woo, okay, sounds good. So Paulina, feel free to reach out to, you can either email team@asianhustlenetwork.org, and then, sorry, we're like in the mix of like changing our domain right now. So I'm gonna type into the chat our email address, and then you can claim your 1 month free subscription to NewCampus. Congratulations, Paulina. Perfect. So thank you so much, Lily. We are so happy to have you as part of our AMA. And so really appreciate you coming on board to talk about your experience as an early entrepreneur. It was very inspiring. And then we also have an event coming up on August 12th, if you guys are interested. So we'll be talking about mental health and mental health awareness. And as you all know, we're living in a very interesting time right now, and mental health is very important to talk about, given that we're still expected to wake up every morning and go to work and perform our best even in the middle of a pandemic. So we just want to make sure that we're here for all of you guys for support. And if you guys want to talk about anything related to mental health, or if you guys just want to connect with others, feel free to join that webinar. It's going to be on August 12th. And feel free to check our AHN Facebook group for more information on that. We'll be announcing it in the next coming days. All right, Angelina, do you want to close it off with Lily?
Sure. Okay, awesome. Yeah, thanks again, everyone, for tuning in. It was my pleasure to be the moderator today. So as we're closing out in the last few minutes, I just want Lily to take it away and let us know where we can find her.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone on the AHN team. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Instagram. It's all under It's Lily Wu. And then I also have 2 drawing accounts. One is called the Traveling Sketchbook. So a lot of the drawings that you saw earlier were on there. And then also I have one called Lily's Daily Doodles, which is where I do daily doodles for fun, completely unrelated to anything self-improvement or anything like that. So just random interests that I have. But if you have any kind of interesting hobbies or things that you like to do, let me know as well. And also let me know if you want to be part of our growth mindset index that we're working with the Singapore government on for NewCampus. Would love to get anyone who is an advocate for growth mindset to also be involved. So yes, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Lily. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Bye.